Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. Tonight's tale begins not with thunder, but with silence. Not with heroes, but with those who chose to act when others did not. This is a story of a calligrapher's daughter, a wandering fighter, a jester who once bowed to a throne, and the quiet battle for a forgotten empire. A dragon sleeps at the heart of this tale. But true power may lie in the one who dares to let it go. So settle in. Breathe deep. Let this journey carry you like wind over distant mountains. And if this story brings you peace, consider subscribing to Deep Sleep Stories, where the night always holds one more secret. In the lantern glow hours just before dawn, when the imperial capital still slept beneath its silken canopy of fog, Mei Lin stood alone in her father's calligraphy workshop. The shutters were drawn, but morning light slipped through the cracks like secrets. Ink pots rested where they always had, brushes nestled like sleeping birds, and scrolls lined the walls in tidy vertical rows, except one. One scroll lay open on the central table, freshly unrolled, whispering a quiet truth that she wasn't yet ready to believe. It was her father's hand, without doubt. The strokes of the dragon he had painted were exquisite, alive with motion, full of breath and fury, every scale a story, every curve a whisper of wind. But the final brushstroke was missing. The dragon's eye was closed. Its power, incomplete. And her father was gone. They said he had been arrested in the night, taken from their home by men in silence and shadow. Accused of treason, the officials claimed. Of falsifying records in the palace archive. But Mei Lin knew her father. He had served as chief calligrapher to the emperor for 30 years. His brush had recorded royal edicts, births, marriages, oaths of peace and war. He wasn't a traitor. He was careful. Private, perhaps. But never a liar. Her fingers hovered above the scroll, not touching the ink, but close enough to feel the weight of it. There was something strange about the image. Something it was trying to say. A sound from the alley below, a soft clatter, then the unmistakable creak of footsteps climbing stairs. Mei Lin snatched the scroll, rolling it swiftly, and tucked it beneath the folds of her robe. She was barely in time. A shadow passed across the rice paper screen of the workshop door. Then another. Figures moved in silence, dressed in dark clothes, their presence speaking of cold purpose. Not soldiers. Not officials. Something else. She didn't wait. Through the back, down the narrow steps, heart pounding like a frightened bird, she slipped into the morning fog. The scroll throbbed with warmth against her ribs. She didn't look back. They gave chase. Quick, practiced, silent. She darted down familiar alleys, past fishmongers just beginning to set their stalls, past rows of laundry swaying like flags of surrender. She ducked through a shrine gate, over a low wall, into a thicket of garden brush. And then, a blur of motion, a sound like wind splitting stone, a boy appeared. He moved like a blade. Not polished, not practiced, but sharp. He swept his arm out, knocking aside one of her pursuers with a wooden staff. The man staggered back, caught off guard. Mei Lin's eyes widened. "Come on," the boy said. His voice was rough, but not unkind. He led her through a tangle of alleys, then into the outer districts, past the city's sleeping vendors and shuttered tea-houses. The city narrowed here, pressed in by overgrown paths and crumbling stairways. Finally, they emerged into the overgrown courtyard of an abandoned temple. Stone lions guarded the entrance, their faces softened by rain and moss. The temple roof sagged with age. But the door opened with a sigh, and they slipped inside. Only then did they speak. "I'm Bao," he said. "Came to the capital to find a sword master. Found you instead." "Mei Lin," she replied. "And I think you just saved my life." The fire they lit was small, shielded by stone. The air inside the temple smelled of thyme and incense long burned. Dust floated in shafts of light that spilled through the broken roof. On the far wall, partly hidden behind a faded curtain, they found it, a carving. Weathered but familiar. It was a dragon. Curled majestic. And just like the scroll, one stroke missing. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a different figure crept through the palace grounds. Zhang Wei had once made emperors laugh. Once juggled oranges before silk-robed ministers. Once danced like a fool in the throne room's shadow. But those days were gone. Now he moved through the palace like a ghost, slipping through cracks in walls and habits. In a forgotten wing of the palace archives, he found what he was looking for, an unmarked scroll tucked deep in a bundle of royal correspondence. Its title, barely legible, read, "The Heart of the Celestial Dragon." He smirked. "Well now," he whispered, "that sounds like something worth stealing." None of them, Mei Lin, Bao, or Zhang Wei, knew each other yet. But already, their paths were circling something old, something powerful. Something hidden. That night, as Bao kept watch and the temple settled into silence, Mei Lin unrolled the dragon scroll again beneath a sliver of moonlight. And there, as the light struck the parchment just right, she saw it, a shimmer of ink that hadn't been visible before. Faint lines. Characters written in her father's most delicate script. They read, "Seek the heart in the cup where shadows steep." She stared, the words settling into her chest like a soft bell toll. A riddle. A clue. A beginning. In the mountains beyond the city, nestled in forgotten mist and tea fields, there was an old village. Once known for its quiet steeps and whispered legends. Shadowy Village. The road into the mountains was quiet. Not the hush of stillness, but of waiting. The path wound upward through a narrowing corridor of cypress and pine, where low mist clung to the forest floor like a breath too stubborn to fade. Bao led, staff in hand, stepping carefully over roots and stone. Mei Lin followed, the scroll hidden beneath her robes, her thoughts louder than the wind. They spoke little. The city was behind them. The capital, with its alleys of ink and shadow, its rumors and vanished fathers. What lay ahead was quieter, but no less haunted. By late afternoon, the mist had thickened. It caught in their hair, on their sleeves, on the worn path like a veil drawn over memory. Then, through the gray rooftops, the village emerged not all at once, but piece by piece. First a crumbling lantern post, then the bent timbers of a broken gate. Finally, the full outline, a small hamlet spread over the hills in quiet tiers, its homes weathered and bowed with time. It should have felt abandoned. But it didn't. The tea terraces had long gone wild. Trees once pruned into graceful bowing shapes now twisted in errant directions, their leaves silvered with dew. Crates lay overturned. A kettle sat rusting on a porch rail, as though someone had meant to return. Bao glanced at Mei Lin. They left in a hurry. She nodded, eyes sweeping across the courtyard stones. This place, it knew stories. My father used to say the best tea always came from hands that remembered sorrow. She led him past sagging buildings and shuttered stalls, until they reached it, a shop with a faded red banner still swaying above the door. The characters, though smudged, read Spring Moon Leaf Works. Inside, time had gathered like dust. The interior was cool, dark, lined with bamboo shelves and rows of small wooden drawers labeled in careful brushstrokes. The air smelled of dried leaves and old smoke, faint, but familiar. This was his friend's, Mei Lin said quietly. Uncle Shun. He used to send us bricks of oolong wrapped in poetry. Bao lifted a fallen lid from the floor, revealing rows of neatly stacked teapots, thick, round, pressed leaves bound in silk paper. He held one up, turning it over in the filtered light. That's not just tea, Mei Lin said. She took it, unwrapping it gently. The inside was laced with threads of gold leaf, wound in spirals. At the center, a faint ridge, not accidental. She broke it carefully in half. Inside the core, packed within the leaves, lay a brittle fragment of parchment, not a full scroll, but the arc of a map, hand-painted and sealed with a thread of wax. Before they could study it further, a sound stirred the silence. A footstep, light but deliberate. Bao reached for his staff, Mei Lin froze, but what entered the doorway was not a soldier or shadow, but a woman. She wore robes the color of whetstone, with a sash of green silk. Her hair was bound in a long silver braid, and her presence seemed both older and softer than the mountains themselves. She carried no pack, only a small teapot of translucent porcelain, tucked in both hands as if it were a precious promise. "Tea," she said gently, "should never be brewed in fear." Bao's grip did not ease. "Who are you?" "A guest," she replied. "And perhaps a reminder." She stepped lightly across the wooden floor, knelt near the cold hearth, and began to build a fire from dry pine needles and a twist of old bark. Neither of them moved to stop her. "I came this way once before," she said as the fire began to glow. "Long ago, when the trees still bowed to the sun. He was here then, the man who carved the seal." Mei Lin's breath caught. "You knew my father?" The woman did not answer directly. She poured water from a gourd, added a handful of pale leaves to the pot, leaves nearly colorless, as though dried in moonlight. "Transparent tea," she murmured. "Steeped only in silence. Drunk only by those who seek what lies beneath names." She offered Mei Lin a cup first. The liquid shimmered. Not clear, but shifting. Like morning dew on glass. Mei Lin hesitated, then drank. The world went soft. Not black, not gone, just softer, as if someone had dimmed the lanterns of the mind and left behind only memory's echo. She was in a garden, moonlit. Stone lanterns. The hush of wind over gravel. And there, seated at a calligraphy table, her father. His face was calm. Lined, but not broken. He turned toward her and spoke with no movement of lips, yet the words filled the air like bells in snowfall. "Do not trust silver faces." She tried to reach out. Tried to speak. But the vision dissolved like steam on stone. Mei Lin blinked, the shop returning. Her cup trembled in her hand. "What did you see?" Bao asked. She shook her head slowly. "A warning." He moved to the door, eyes scanning the clearing. "There are others here," he said. "Or were. A broken branch on the ridge. Tracks that don't belong to us." She stood, hands still unsteady. "We have to move." She turned the teapot over once more, and there, burned into the bottom, was a seal. Circular. Twin phoenixes circling a dragon. The imperial crest. But altered. Twisted slightly. As if forged or echoed. Below it, 3 characters scratched in haste. "Watching. Move swiftly." They both looked to the doorway, where mist thickened once more. And so they left the shop, map in hand, steam in memory, and began the descent toward the city of old officials. Behind them, in the empty tea shop, the fire smoldered down to embers. The woman in the gray robe was gone. Only the scent of her tea remained, faint, and sharp, and strange. The old sewer stone was colder than Zhang Wei remembered. His boots slid slightly on the moss-covered edge as he dropped down from the broken cistern grate. A splash echoed down the corridor, swallowed quickly by the hush that lived beneath the imperial capital. Even here, even in the gut of the city, silence had rank. Once, these tunnels had carried more than waste. They carried whispers. Secrets. And once, they carried his voice, laughing and leaping through these same halls, balancing a painted fan on his nose while ministers drank rice wine and forgot to guard their words. But that was before. Now, he was no fool. Now, he was a ghost retracing the steps of a man who had smiled too easily, and learned too late. A rat skittered past his foot. He didn't flinch. The lantern in his hand gave off just enough light to cast his shadow ahead of him, stretched and broken across the low, wet walls. He passed old tunnels he remembered well, one that led beneath the kitchens, another below the women's quarters. He'd snuck in once to return a stolen slipper. Another time, to leave a love note never answered. He stopped at a stone engraved faintly with a jester's mask, almost rubbed clean by time. He pressed his palm flat against it. A soft click echoed. The wall creaked. Shifted. And then opened. He slipped inside. The crawl space narrowed, thick with the scent of wet parchment and mildew. But Zhang Wei crawled like a man with purpose, not quickly, but with memory in every motion. He emerged behind a shelf in the lowest archive wing of the palace, a place now more rumor than record. Dust hung in the air like the breath of old emperors. He moved through the aisles with quiet urgency, eyes darting across worn scroll cases, cracked lacquer boxes, bundles of string-bound books. He wasn't looking for anything specific, only something that didn't belong. Then he saw it. A scroll case, newer than the rest. The ribbon that bound it was purple, marked not with a seal, but a symbol, 3 dragon claws circling a black dot. Not official. Not catalogued. Hidden. He slid it from the shelf, heart steady. Fingers worked the ribbon free. Inside, a scroll, smooth and untouched by mildew. On its edge, in red ink, Imperial Secret. His breath slowed. He unrolled it. The first lines were familiar, a folk tale he'd once performed with bells on his ankles and feathers in his hat. When the stars fell from the sky, and the dragon's heart burned through the sea. But the tale twisted midway. It described not a myth, but a record, of a sealed relic buried deep beneath the lake of the eastern province, once used by the dragon priesthood to anoint rulers in times of war. It spoke of a tomb complex, veiled in illusion, its entrance marked only by sound. Below it, a map fragment, stylized, but clear, a winding path to a lake with a single island. Once sacred. Now forgotten. He was about to re-roll the scroll when he heard it, a footfall behind him. Too soft for a guard. Too heavy for a scholar. Zhang froze. Then turned, just in time to duck. A blade flashed through the space where his neck had been, slicing into the wooden shelf with a splintering crack. He rolled backward, scroll still in hand, and looked up into the face of a man he once knew. No name. Just the eyes. Silver-threaded eyebrows. A jaw like broken porcelain. And silence, always silence. The man didn't speak now. He didn't need to. They had shared assignments before. Shared nights and rooftops watching other men die. He thought the man was dead. Apparently not. Zhang dodged another strike, the arc of the blade catching his sleeve and opening a red line across his arm. He hissed, staggered back, knocking over a stack of record boxes. "I'm flattered," he muttered, breath shallow. "All this trouble for little old me." The man advanced. Zhang tossed the lantern, letting it shatter between them in a burst of light and smoke. Then he ran. Blood dripped from his sleeve as he twisted through the narrow corridors, taking turns he hadn't walked in years. He knew the layout better than most, but this was no stage now. No act. He clutched the scroll tighter, even as the pain in his arm sharpened. His breath grew ragged. One wrong step, and it would be over. He reached the same hidden wall he'd entered through, found the jester's mark, pressed it. Nothing. He pressed again, harder. A whisper behind him. He spun. But no blade came. Only a scrap of paper, floating down from the rafters. He caught it by instinct. On it, in handwriting that didn't belong to any archivist. "Those who seek the heart are already behind you." He looked up. No one there. But his wound burned colder now. He slipped through the opening as it finally yielded, collapsed onto the stone tunnel floor, and crawled a few feet before letting his body fall flat, scroll beneath him, breath coming in stutters. He had what he didn't come for. A story buried in secrecy. A map towards something long believed a legend. And the unmistakable sense that he was no longer chasing the truth. He was being hunted by it. The mist rolled low over the lake, thick as folded silk, and the stars had gone into hiding. Mei Lin crouched near the shore, her cloak drawn close, gaze fixed on the island beyond. A faint silhouette through the fog, not large, no more than a rocky rise cradled by cypress and bone-pale reeds. But she could feel it, even from here. The hush. The pull. As though the island had been waiting for something to return. Or someone. Behind her, Bao cursed under his breath. No boats. Again. They had found the fishing village deserted, not abandoned, but carefully emptied. Nets still drying. Bowls still warm on doorsteps. But every skiff had been smashed, their hulls split and pushed ashore like broken ribs. "Someone doesn't want that island visited," he said. Mei Lin's hand moved to the scroll tucked against her side. "Which means it's exactly where we need to go." They scouted in silence until they found it, a water buffalo tethered near the edge of the marsh. Its cart was long gone, but the tether rope was strong. They didn't speak of the cold. Or the dark. Together, they lashed bamboo into makeshift floats, and lashed them again into something that might carry them. It would not be fast. Or easy. But it would float. At the edge of the lake, Mei Lin turned to Bao. You don't have to come. He gave her a look. We crossed worse things to get here. Cold water doesn't scare me. Then softer. And you'd drift in circles without me. They pushed off just after midnight, bamboo creaking under their weight, fog curling above the black water like smoke from a quiet fire. Halfway across, Mei Lin closed her eyes. The water beneath them was perfectly still. No frogs. No fish. No wind. Only memory. Long ago, she had been here with her father. She remembered the scent of plum blossom. Remembered candles floating on the water, released by silent pilgrims. She had asked what the island was for. Promises, he had said. But not all promises were kept. They reached the shore without a sound. The trees were older here, roots like knotted ropes, their trunks shaped by wind and rain into gestures of reverence. Moss blanketed the stones. A half-collapsed archway marked the path inward. Beyond it, a pavilion. Its roof bowed under centuries of rain. The columns were carved with clouds and scaled beasts, and no time had worn the colors to whispers. The dragon etched above the lintel still watched with open eyes. Inside, silence lived. The air smelled of cedar and dust. At the center stood a statue, a dragon, coiled in repose, its mouth parted slightly in the shape of a question. Beneath it, the floor was inlaid with stone tiles, and one tile, just beneath the dragon's heart, was different. Bao knelt, ran his hand over the seam. It's newer than the rest. Set like a hinge. Mei Lin pressed her fingers to its edge, and felt it shift. The tile lifted. Beneath it, a scroll case, wrapped in oilcloth sealed with wax. She unrolled it with careful hands. Another fragment of the map. But that wasn't all. A bronze plaque lay flat beneath it, covered in patina and dust. Carved in ancient script, just clear enough to read. When three hearts unite, the dragon shall open its eyes. Before they could speak, a sound shattered the hush. Hooves. Fast. Bao turned toward the pavilion entrance just as three riders burst through the fog, cloaks snapping like banners, faces hidden behind silver masks. Mei Lin drew a breath, but no scream came. One rider dismounted. Blade drawn. Bao raised his staff, bracing. But before the fight began, another shape stumbled from the trees. Limping. Bleeding. Jiang Wei. His robes were torn, his arm bound with a sash darkened by blood, but his eyes still held their signature mischief, tired now, but unbroken. He fell against a pillar. Didn't expect a welcoming party. Mei Lin stared. You followed us? No, he coughed. I fled. And apparently we fled in the same direction. One of the masked riders pointed a curved sword toward him. You should have stayed dead, the man growled. Jiang Wei's smile cracked like a bone. Ah, I remember that voice. Still taking orders from the man with no shadow? Bao moved to defend him. Who are they? Old friends, Jiang muttered. Very bad at farewells. The fight was quick. The pavilion gave them cover, stone columns and high steps, but the riders fought with precision. Not bandits. Trained. Bao's staff met blade. Sparks. Stone dust. Mei Lin used the base of the dragon statue to duck, dragging Zhang behind her. One rider tried to corner them, but hesitated. His eyes lingered on Zhang's face. You were his favorite, the man said, voice hollow through the mask. What changed? I stopped lying for him. Their blades clashed. It ended in a blur, steel against staff, a falling rider, a horse bolting into the fog. The others retreated, vanishing as quickly as they had come. Silence returned, torn but settling. Mei Lin, Bao, and Jiang Wei stood together in the pavilion's hollow light. Not allies yet. but no longer strangers. Jean knelt near the open tile, eyeing the plaque. He traced the inscription with one finger. 3 hearts, he murmured. I suppose that means us. Bao frowned. You think this is fate? I think, Jean said, someone wanted 3 people to find this. And maybe not just for the treasure. Mei Lin looked at them both, then back to the scroll. Her father's voice echoed again. Don't trust silver faces. He'd known. Long before his arrest. He'd known who was coming. What they'd chase. He hadn't left a path to a relic. He'd left a map to the truth. At the edge of the scroll, a new symbol appeared, 3 wave crests, etched into the margin like a quiet signature. Mei Lin pointed. That's the mark of the coastal monasteries, where they kept royal records and imperial gifts. Zhang nodded. Then that's where we go next. They stepped into the dawn together, the fog parting before them. 3 hearts, 1 map, and the slow breath of something ancient, finally waking. The sea met the cliffs like breath meeting stone, never ending, never yielding. Waves crashed far below as Mei Lin, Bao, and Zhang Wei climbed the narrow path that clung to the rock like a thread of memory. The sky above them was gray and vast. The wind carried the scent of salt, kelp, and secrets. The monastery revealed itself only at the final bend, not a building perched upon the stone, but a place carved from it. Its archways yawned like open mouths in the cliffside, its terraces hung above the sea like outstretched hands. Statues of dragons, smoothed by wind and salt, stood guard beside the stairs. Their faces were turned inland, not outward, as if they were watching something not yet arrived. No bells. No chants. Only silence, and the low roar of the sea. They passed under a worn lintel that read, in old script, What endures must first be emptied. Within the stone corridors, everything was quiet, not abandoned, but deliberate. Sand filled the corners of the floor. Lamps burned with blue oil. The air was cooler here, touched by the ocean's breath. The monks wore no color, only robes the shade of driftwood, and faces lined by wind and age. They spoke nothing. Not even to each other. Only the sound of bare feet and turning pages. One monk, older than the others, motioned them inward with a hand that trembled slightly but held great care. He led them through a side passage, down worn stairs slick with salt. At the foot of the steps lay a wide courtyard, open to the sea on one side. There he knelt. With slow, practiced movements he arranged stones on the sand, smooth, white, gathered from the shore. It took several minutes. No one interrupted. When he finished, the stones formed 5 characters in elegant script. Beneath silence, truth. Beneath truth, trial. He added one more line, a question. Will you bear it? Mei Lin bowed low. Bao followed her gesture, unsure, but respectful. Zhang Wei only tilted his head, as if already measuring the cost. The old monk, they would later learn his name was Lan, rose and led them onward. The way twisted deep into the cliff. Lan did not light a torch. Instead, he touched one wall, and a hidden panel gave way with a low sigh of stone. Within lay a chamber lit by a shaft of pale light, filtering through a slit in the ceiling like moonlight passed through water. There, set into the floor, lay a copper disc. Half covered by dust, half polished by time. Carved into it, the same 3 waves seen on the scroll. Beside it, beneath glass, another fragment of the map. And a broken shard of mirrored bronze, engraved with the shape of a dragon whose eyes were closed. They gathered around it, breath held. This is older than the scroll, Mei Lin murmured. Zhang Wei touched the edge of the mirror. His reflection came back in pieces, fractured, misaligned. What happens? He said softly. When the dragon opens its eyes? Before anyone could answer, he stood and excused himself. Going to look around, he said with a crooked smile. Old habits. Mei Lin nodded, distracted by the map. Bao kept watching the mirror, how it did not reflect the chamber, but something else. The edge of a garden. A flicker of flame. And then, a shape on the wall. Bao stepped closer. A relief carving. Almost lost in the shadows. He leaned in, and his breath caught. It was a child. Barefoot, staring up at a tower. A staff in his hand. A fire behind him. A figure above, not cruel, but cold. He had never spoken of that night to anyone. Not even to Mei Lin. Not even to himself. But it was here. Exactly as he remembered. As if carved from memory, not stone. He reached out, but stopped. Who knew? Why? Up above, Zhang Wei moved deeper into the outer cloister, toward the old gardens. That's when he saw her. She was kneeling in the shadow of an ancient bell, brushing sand from a stone basin. Her robe was monastic gray, but her movements, precise, fluid, did not belong to this place. She looked up and smiled. Still limping, she said. Yun Qi, he said, voice flat. I thought you died in the fire at Mingxiao. I did, she said calmly. Just not all the way. She rose. I'm not here to fight, she said. I'm here because I was told you'd come. And that you'd be tired enough to listen. He didn't speak. You were promised a trial. But what if I could give you something better, the truth, in exchange for silence? Walk away from the girl and the boy. Deliver what they find. You could stand in the palace again. Zhang's eyes narrowed. And who would I be standing beside? She stepped closer. Someone who remembers your name. Not just your performance. He didn't move. But his silence deepened. I'll leave you time, she said, turning. But not much. She vanished into the mist beyond the garden steps, as if the monastery had swallowed her whole. Zhang returned before sunset. His limp was more pronounced. His smile, quieter. Bao said nothing. Mei Lin looked at him long, as if trying to see beyond the shape of his face. They gathered again in the underground chamber. There, on the far wall, Bao had noticed another line of characters revealed by the shifting light. The snake hides in the song. Mei Lin read it aloud. A theater, she whispered. A place of stories. Lin Shan, Zhang said without hesitation. There's an old playhouse there. Still performs for merchants. But once, Mei Lin echoed. It served a different master. The three stood in silence, the sea breathing beneath their feet. Together, yet each bearing a truth they had not spoken. By the time the three travelers reached Linshan, the city had already awakened into festival. Banners in hues of scarlet, emerald, and gold fluttered above cobbled lanes. Stalls overflowed with candied fruits and embroidered fans. Paper dragons slithered on strings above laughing crowds. Every corner of the city throbbed with music, flutes, cymbals, and the shrill poetry of opera. But beneath the gaiety, there was something else. A hum too steady to be joy. A rhythm more rehearsed than real. Too much color, Zhang Wei muttered, shielding his eyes. Someone's trying to distract the gods. Bao scanned the rooftops. Or each other. Mei Lin said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the towering heart of the city, the Grand Opera House. Built from pale stone and capped with a golden dome, it loomed like a shrine to sound and spectacle. Silk banners rippled from its balconies, each painted with a symbol, a teardrop cradled by flames. Mei Lin whispered, Tears of the Dragon. That's the play. Zhang Wei nodded. An old one. Older than it pretends. Inside, the theater pulsed with light and movement. Actors hurried down velvet corridors and white-powdered masks. Musicians tuned their instruments in a flurry of string and breath. Vendors sold paper masks at the doors, promising new faces for new fates. A girl in a green rehearsal robe nearly collided with them backstage, clutching a stack of scripts. Careful, Bao said, catching her arm gently. She blinked, then froze. You're not stagehands. No, Mei Lin said calmly. But you're an Ai Mao, the actress who sings in the second act. Suspicion flickered across the girl's eyes. Who are you? We're looking for something, Zhang said. And we think your stage is hiding it. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she exhaled and said, Follow me. She led them behind the silk backdrops and painted screens, past the scent of grease paint and incense, down a narrow stair behind the costume gallery, until the marble floor gave way to old stone. Lanterns grew sparse. Sound dropped away. They sealed this part years ago. She said? Said it was unsafe. Or cursed. And yet here you are. Bao murmured. And Mao's voice softened. My father runs this theater. But not just as an impresario. She paused by a locked iron gate. He's one of them. The ones your map is warning about. Yang's eyebrows rose. I found a list once, she said. Names. All written in 2 columns, loyal and replaceable. I was on the second. She turned the key. Inside the forgotten sublevel, the air smelled of dust and memory. Columns lined with peeling murals curved into darkness. At the far end, a chest of dark lacquer untouched by time. Carved into its lid, a mask. And beneath it, in old script, those who see the play may rewrite the world. They opened it slowly. Inside, a piece of the map. And beside it, something stranger, a small scroll wrapped around a stone disc carved with a sleeping dragon. On the back of the scroll, a fable written in rhyme. The snake will dance where the song is strong. But follow the beat too long, you're gone. Truth wears a costume, masks the pain. But silence remembers your true name. On the wall behind the chest, hidden in the cracked mural, was a painted door. Around it curled a desert scene, dunes, stars, and a sun frozen at the edge of the sky. At its base, 3 characters. The timeless city. Mei Lin touched the image with reverence. My father spoke of this place, but only in riddles. He said it was where truth never aged, only waited. Behind them, a footstep echoed. Bao turned. A woman in crimson robes stood at the end of the hall. Her voice, when it came, was music. You shouldn't be here, little fire. It was Yun Qi. But this time, she wore the ornaments of a court singer, hair swept high, sleeves heavy with threadwork, a mask of pearls half veiling her face. Bao, she said softly. I hoped you'd come. Mei Lin's hand reached for the scroll, but Bao stepped forward first. You're not a singer. No, Yun Qi replied. But I do know what song your family sang. Bao's breath caught. Your mother, she continued, didn't die in the fire, as they told you. Nor your younger sister. They were taken. Held. Insurance. You're lying, he whispered. I can prove it. She stepped closer, extending a jade pendant, cracked, weathered, unmistakable. His mother's. Bao staggered. You want to save them? Yun Qi's voice was silk. Give me the girl. Let me finish what your father started. You'll be free. They'll live. Silence held. Then Bao turned, and threw the pendant into the dark. No more lies. He grabbed Mei Lin's hand. Run. They fled through the murals. And Mao lit their way with a hidden lantern, her face pale but determined. Behind them, Yun Qi didn't chase. She only whispered to the dark. He's almost ready. Later, back above the city, the 3 hid in the rafters of the theater, watching the tears of the dragon as the final act unfolded. On stage, an emperor knelt beside a sleeping dragon, begging for its heart. The painted backdrop shimmered with candlelight, and in its design, high above the false mountains, Mei Lin saw it. The same symbol from the scroll. The heart of the dragon. Painted in plain sight. Someone within the theater knew. Had always known. Below, the audience applauded. Above, in the shadows, Zhang Wei said nothing. And no one noticed how tightly his hand gripped the edge of the balcony rail. The desert did not begin with heat. It began with silence. Beyond the final ridge of settled land, the world unraveled into gold, wave upon wave of sand, folding into itself like memory over time. The sun hung high, but the wind was cool and dry, whispering stories too old to translate. Their guide, Xiao Dao, moved through the dunes with the patience of stone. His face was leathered and sun-darkened, his eyes pale as old jade. He carried little, spoke less. But when Mei Lin mentioned her father, He paused beneath the twisted husk of an old desert tree and said simply, "I knew a man with that name. He carried no sword, only a brush. But he could silence soldiers with a single stroke." She didn't ask more. He didn't offer it. By the third day, the dunes grew steeper. Shadows lengthened unnaturally fast. Then, on the fourth, just as the wind died and even the sand seemed to still, Xiao Dao pointed. There. It did not rise like a city. It sank. The city without time lay in a great depression between dunes, veiled by distance and heat. Only the tips of towers breached the horizon, ancient domes, broken minarets, a single gate half buried in drifting gold. As they descended, the illusion of ruin fell away. The gate opened onto streets half filled with sand but untouched by rot. Buildings leaned, but their paint remained. Doors stood ajar. Pottery sat on windowsills. A meal, uneaten, lay on a long coal brazier. Water shimmered in shallow canals, undisturbed. No footsteps. No birds. No decay. It was not abandoned. It had paused. And I Mao whispered, "It's like someone left just moments ago." "Or never left at all," Bao added. They walked the main avenue until they reached a quiet courtyard ringed with broken columns. There, beneath an arch carved with constellations, Mei Lin found it. A wall, whitewashed long ago, now bearing a single message in dark, graceful ink. "I went deeper. If you do not find me, find truth." She knew the hand that wrote it. Her father's brush was unmistakable. Beneath it, almost hidden behind crumbling vines, lay a folded robe. Familiar. Ink-stained. Next to it, a small lacquered case, open, empty. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, but there was no blood. No signs of struggle. No path forward. Only another phrase scratched into the stone by knife or nail. "I knew you would come." She sank to her knees. Zhang rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. Bao stood apart, watching the horizon, jaw set. That night they made camp in the central hall of what once may have been a library, tall windows now opening into the stars. As they slept, the city stirred. Not in stone or shadow, but in dream. Bao's dream was not new, but it had changed. He stood in the burning village of his childhood, again. But this time, the fire did not roar. It whispered, and from the smoke emerged a figure in silver, not an enemy, but someone who turned to him with open hands. "Run," the figure had said once. "Now, remember." He woke breathless. The name of his mother half formed on his lips. Zhang Wei's dream was a memory. A night in the palace. He had performed a satire, light, clever, dangerous. The wrong person had laughed. But now, in the dream, the hall was different. The man who ordered his exile did not smile. He wept. And Zhang saw, in the candlelight, a different face watching from the shadows, silver-masked, unmoving. He woke with sweat on his brow, his hand resting on the hilt of a blade he hadn't drawn in years. Mei Lin's dream was quiet. She stood in a garden she had never seen, beneath a plum tree heavy with blossom. Her father sat nearby, not old, not young. He was holding something, a small scroll, sealed with a red thread. He turned to her, but didn't hand it over. Instead, he passed it, to a man whose face was hidden behind silver. When she tried to speak, the dream faded like ink in rain. Morning came behind clouds. Wind shifted the dunes like sighs. They returned to the square. And I Mao was the first to spot it, a mosaic berry just beneath the drifting sand. Together they cleared it, brush by brush, until the full design revealed itself, a great compass of colored glass, each cardinal direction etched in ancient script. But it did not point north. At its center, a single phrase glinted in gold tesserae. Palace of the Four Winds, the last gate. 4 towers, like the 4 corners of a map. And in the center, a shape like a beating heart. Mei Lin looked to the horizon. "That's where he went next." Zhang nodded slowly. "And that's where someone doesn't want us to follow." They turned to pack. But Bao paused. Near one half-buried pillar, something glinted. He brushed aside sand, and unearthed it. A silver mask. Fractured down one side. Its design was unmistakable. He turned it in his hand. The same type worn by the riders who hunted them. But this one he'd seen before. Years ago. Worn by the silent figure who pulled him from fire and pushed him into safety, once upon a smoke-choked childhood night. He had never known who it was. Now he did. Or almost did. Because whoever wore it once was watching still. And walking just ahead of them. The mountains of Fechuan did not welcome travelers. Their peaks were carved by cold and age, their passes knotted by mist. The air grew thin, and every step above the cloud line felt like breathing through silk. Trees twisted into half-forms, as if wind alone had sculpted them. Even the birds did not sing. It was near dusk when Mei Lin and her companions reached the plateau, and saw it. The Palace of the Four Winds, its spires fractured and leaning, emerged like a ghost from the stone. Ancient domes once clad in bronze now wore cloaks of lichen. Its towers pointed toward the heavens like frozen prayers. Though crumbled, the place was not dead. Monks in grey moved like shadows along the parapets. None approached. None spoke. At the entrance, four archways yawned, one in each direction. Above each, a single character was carved. East. South. West. North. But the wind howled from none of them. Jiang Wei examined the frescoes near the central gate, swirling murals chipped by time. "This is the riddle," he said. "Only one path leads forward. The others lead into the rock, and seal behind you. The monks won't help?" And I Mao asked. "They already have," Mei Lin murmured, reading the faded lines. "They left the truth in paint." Each fresco depicted a scene of elemental wind, blossoms scattering eastward, a crane flying against the southern gust, incense curling west, a burning torch unshaken in the north. "It's north," Bao said. "The fire doesn't move." Zhang hesitated. "It's a trick. Stillness isn't truth." But Mei Lin nodded. "No. The wind that reveals is the one that meets no resistance. North is the test. It asks nothing. It lets you enter." They stepped through the northern gate. Stone closed behind them like breath drawn sharp. Inside, the palace spiraled downward. Not a temple, not exactly. More an observatory of time, with chambers built for watching stars and keeping secrets. Bronze instruments hung in dusted silence. Celestial charts, faded, cracked, lined the vaulted ceilings. And in the central chamber, a massive armillary sphere, crafted of copper and glass, suspended by chains from 4 points. Within it, a keyhole. On a pedestal beside it, the final piece of the map, waiting like something returned. Mei Lin stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. From recognition. The inscriptions were her father's work. Every character carried his restraint. "This is it," she whispered. "Everything leads here." And then came the voice behind her. "Not everything." And I Mao. She stood by the door, map scroll now in her hands, face unreadable. "You were never meant to finish it," she said. Mei Lin froze. "Why?" "Because the Empire's already changing. My father knew that long before yours. You used us." And I Mao didn't flinch. "I wanted to believe you. I still might. But he's too close now. And if he gets there first..." She turned and ran. Bao sprinted after her. Mei Lin followed, but only to the hall's threshold before a sharp click echoed beneath her. "No!" Zhang shouted. "The floor!" A trapplate gave way. Metal groaned. A blade swung down from above like a scythe. But it didn't strike her. Bao was there first. He shoved her aside. The blade cut deep. He collapsed in her arms, blood warm against the stone. Mei Lin held him, her voice shaking. "No, no, not now. Not you." Bao looked up, pain clouding his eyes, and still managed a crooked smile. "Didn't I say I'd get you across the river?" He drifted into unconsciousness. Behind them, Zhang was already moving, past the sealed trap, through a side passage only he seemed to know. He didn't explain how. He didn't look back. Mei Lin called after him. He didn't answer. He vanished into the wind. Night fell without stars. In a side chamber, Mei Lin tended Bao's wound. It ran from shoulder to hip, deep, ragged. He breathed, but shallowly. The blade had been poisoned. She worked with trembling fingers, applying everything her mother had taught her. Mao was gone. The map, too. The fire crackled low. Wind moaned through the stone vents, shifting like a voice that had forgotten how to speak. And then Mei Lin found it, carved into the frame of the observation window. A message scratched in haste, in the same hand that had written in the desert. The heart will pass through the palace of shadows. She knew the name. The Palace of the Nameless. A secret fortress spoken of only in riddles and spy songs, a place where memories were erased, and identities remade. Zhang had said nothing. He knew. And he was already on his way. Dawn came, and Bao stirred. But he was too weak to move. Mei Lin kissed his forehead, brushed the hair from his eyes. Then she stood. I won't stop. She gathered her pack, the broken map pieces, her father's case. Not now. She looked toward the mountains. Not even without you. The mountains grew sharper as Mei Lin climbed, their spines cutting the clouds like blades. Snow crowned the highest ridges, but lower down, the stone turned black, veined with iron, folded in strange, unnatural angles. No birds sang. No wind reached the hollows. Somewhere within this silence was the Palace of the Nameless, not a place drawn on maps, but passed through whispers, hand to hand, like a poisoned coin. She moved cautiously, guided by the map's faded symbols and etched warnings. The path had no trail, only marks scratched into rocks, a three-eyed serpent, a twisted fan, a spiral that pointed down. As dusk lowered its gray veil, Mei Lin stumbled into a ravine choked with bramble and frost. There, crouched on a rock above her, was a figure, small, cloaked in snake skins, with wide, unreadable eyes. I've been waiting, the girl said. Mei Lin steadied herself. Who are you? The girl slid down the slope like a shadow and landed without sound. Ma Shu, she said. I lead snakes out of places. And you walk into them. She held up a carved bone charm, the same sigil etched on Mei Lin's map. I know where you're going, Ma Shu said. But the ones inside don't like surprise guests. There are traps. You'll show me the way? I'll show you how not to die. Her voice held neither threat nor kindness, just a tired sort of truth. They crept into the mountain at moonrise. Through a crack in the cliff face, into a labyrinth of tunnels that smelled of old oil, mold, and forgotten breath. The deeper they went, the less the air seemed to move. As if the rock itself was listening. Finally, beneath a sunken arch, they reached a sealed gate. Ma Shu pressed a coil of wire into its keyhole, twisted once, twice, and the stone rolled open like a sigh. The Palace of the Nameless lay beyond. It was not a palace in any royal sense. It was a city carved into the bones of the mountain, vast halls, tiered galleries, towers of stone layered with ash. Red banners fluttered in corridors where light never touched. Armed figures moved silently along parapets. Beneath it all, meeting rooms, storage vaults, and ritual chambers humming with quiet preparation. Mei Lin entered as a servant, her identity concealed beneath a plain robe and downcast eyes. No one noticed her. No one questioned her presence. Because everyone was too busy preparing for tomorrow. In the great lower hall, she saw them, the conspirators. Nobles. Priests. Advisors in ceremonial gold, draped in masks of lacquer and bone. They stood around a low, glowing altar, murmuring about balance, legacy, and the heart of the dragon. The heart, they said, had been found. And tomorrow, it would be awakened. Elsewhere, in the archives that lay like a buried library below the city, Zhang Wei stepped lightly among the scroll racks. His robes bore the crest of the Circle of Ash, a sworn brotherhood within the rebellion. He had joined them days ago. In appearance, in speech, in vow. but not in soul. He had been gathering names, decoding signals, hiding truths. And now, at the seventh shelf of the inner vault, he heard footsteps. He turned, and froze. It was Mei Lin. She froze too, eyes wide, ready to bolt. "Wait," he said softly. "You betrayed us," she whispered. He held out a scroll. "Your father gave this to someone. I stole it back." She didn't move. Zhang stepped closer. "It's the list. The real one. The people behind the veil. He came here to find it." Mei Lin's hands trembled as she unrolled it. It was all there, names she recognized from the court, from the capital. And others. The ones who ruled by proxy. Who moved the empire from shadowed corners. "He let them take him," she said slowly. "On purpose." Zhang nodded. He knew the only way to get inside was to vanish. They shared a look, not full of trust, not yet. But no longer strangers across a gulf. A sound drew their attention. A child's voice in the shadows. "Ma Shu." She emerged holding a folded cloth. "Your father left this too. It was part of a journal. Just a fragment. If Mei finds this, then I am likely still alive. Or recently dead. If she follows truth instead of grief, then we win." Zhang turned sharply. "How do you know this girl?" "I don't," Mei Lin answered. Ma Shu smiled faintly. "My mother's in there," she said, pointing to the ritual hall above. "She calls herself Sister Flame. She used to sing me lullabies. Now she sings for blood." "You want to stop her?" Zhang asked. "I want her to watch the thing she built collapse." She turned and vanished into the dark. Later that night, Mei Lin slipped into the lower vaults, following a gut feeling more than any map. The guards were light here. No one worried about this wing. No one except her. She followed the curve of the wall past damp stone, past the scent of rot and old ink. Then she saw it. A small cell. And inside, seated in the corner, was her father. Alive. Older. Thinner. His beard was grayer than she remembered. But his eyes, steady, sharp, impossibly calm, rose to meet hers through the grate. "Father!" She pressed close to the bars. He shook his head once. Slowly. Then mouthed the words. "Not now." Then, even more softly. "You're not ready yet." The ritual hall of the Palace of the Nameless rose in stillness like a held breath. It was vast, shaped in deliberate symmetry to the imperial throne room far away in the capital, but inverted. What had once mirrored reverence now reflected ambition. Black stone pillars soared into shadow. Crimson drapes veiled the walls. At the center, beneath a circular dome carved with dragons devouring stars, stood the ancient altar. There, on a pedestal of carved obsidian, lay the heart of the dragon. It pulsed faintly, not with light, but with presence. A relic older than any throne. Crafted in myth. Carried through bloodlines and betrayals. Tonight, it would be awakened. And wielded. Unless someone stopped them. The chamber filled with quiet voices, conspirators cloaked in gray and gold. High advisors, rogue generals, former priests. All masked. All waiting. Zhang Wei stepped forward through a side passage, Mei Lin at his side, her head bowed, hands bound in soft silk. A performance. He had promised her one last act. The speaker of the circle raised a silver rod and called across the chamber. "You bring the vessel?" Zhang's voice was steady. "She carries all three pieces. We confirmed it. Her father gave her more than he knew." The crowd murmured. Anticipation rose like heat. "Bring her to the altar." Mei Lin stepped forward, heart pounding. In her robes were the hidden fragments, sewn into the lining, pressed to her skin. She could feel them humming as she approached the heart. A resonance. A call. And when she stood before it, the heart awoke. It shimmered. Lifted faintly into the air. Threads of light unfurled from its core, red, gold, violet, wrapping around her wrists like vines of fire and wind. "She's the true bearer," someone gasped. "She'll rewrite the oath," said another. Zhang turned to her. His eyes flicked once. Now. The blast came from the western wall. A column split with thunder. Dust and fire roared through the chamber. Screams followed as stone cracked and light poured through. From the rubble stepped Bao. Limping, scarred, but standing. And beside him, Ma Shu, her snakes scattered into shadows, striking at fleeing guards. The hall erupted into chaos. The speaker raised his staff. Secure the heart! Soldiers surged forward. But Zhang was already moving, drawing blades he'd hidden for weeks, cutting down the first attacker. Mei Lin spun, using the distraction to reach into her robe and draw forth the 3 fragments of the map. They hovered around the heart, locking into place. A ring of fire spiraled into the air. But before it could settle, a voice rang out from above. Enough. A figure appeared on the upper gallery, robes torn, hands still bound at the wrists. Her father. He stepped into the light. Mei Lin. Her breath caught. I am proud of you, he said. And then, softly, you must destroy it. The crowd roared in confusion. No! He's mad! She's the key! He looked down at her. I saw what they planned. What they would do with it. Power can never stay clean. Mei Lin's knees shook. The heart trembled before her, beautiful, terrible, ancient. Voices shouted around her. Zhang locked blades with an armored commander. Bao stood face to face with his old master, a man who had once trained him to fight, now cloaked in conspiracy. Bao, the man said. We can fix it. Rule it better. Bao lowered his blade, just for a breath. Then struck. No more lies. Mei Lin turned to the heart. It glowed like a rising sun. Flames danced beneath its surface. She stepped close, and saw something written in the fire. Not carved. Not spoken. Only she could read it. True power belongs to the one who does not take it. She closed her eyes. Thought of her mother's garden. Of the calligraphy brush in her father's hands. Of Bao, broken and healing. Of Zhang, who had risked everything again. Then she lifted the heart high and brought it down against the altar. The sound was like no sound, a silence so total it split the world. Light erupted, white, gold, blue, flooding the chamber. The heart cracked, then shattered. A wind burst through the ritual hall, shaking banners, tearing masks from faces. The flames collapsed inward, swallowed themselves. One by one, torches went out. And then, stillness. When Mei Lin opened her eyes, the chamber was dim. The conspirators were gone, fled or fallen. The heart was ash. Her father knelt beside her, unbound. Zhang leaned on a broken pillar, blood on his sleeve, but smiling faintly. And Bao limped forward, exhaustion in his bones, but alive. Ma Shu stood beside her mother's fallen mask. She dropped it onto the stone, and walked away. Later, as dawn broke over the mountain, Mei Lin stood on the edge of the ruined hall, watching the sun rise. I didn't want to become anything, she said. Her father stood beside her. You didn't. You became yourself. Zhang approached with the final page of the journal, her father's final words. The empire will heal if those who guard it choose silence over control. If they protect not with strength, but with story. Mei Lin nodded. I'll make sure the right story is told. Dawn broke like a question over the shattered cliffs of the Palace of the Nameless. Mist curled through the wreckage, weaving between cracked pillars and broken banners. Stone lay in shards, carved sigils half buried in dust. The wind no longer whispered commands. It carried the scent of ash and earth, and something older. Something free. Mei Lin opened her eyes to silence. Her fingers were scraped. Her robes torn. But her breath came steady, and her heart, light. Across the ruined altar, her father stirred. They found each other without words, 2 shadows moving through the ash, drawn by something more ancient than memory. He held her at last. Not with desperation, but with awe. You chose the only path they feared, he said softly. You became what they could never control. She buried her face in his shoulder, and the weight of all she had carried finally lifted, not gone, but changed. Nearby, Janwei stood with his back to the sun, watching the dust settle. He could have vanished in the chaos, taken a hidden path, disappeared with secrets. But he didn't. Instead, he turned toward the east. Toward the capital. "I won't run anymore," he said. "Let them read what I've written." At his hip, a scroll case now held the truth. Documents, names, stories once buried beneath years of silence. This time, he would not perform with laughter. He would speak with ink. High above, on the last standing tower, Bao leaned into the wind. He looked toward the rising sun, no longer seeking war, or glory, or proof of strength. Those were shadows of a boy who believed power came from the blade. Now he knew better. Strength, he had learned, was choosing who to protect. And why. He turned from the sun and began his descent, step by step, not downward but forward. Ma Shu returned to the edge of her world, where the forest met the sand. The children in her village once feared her, with her snakes and silence. Now they followed her, wide-eyed, listening as she spoke of venom and survival and how not all poisons kill, some reveal. She buried her mother's broken mask beneath a silver tree, then stood tall before a circle of girls in faded robes. "Today," she said, "you learn how to walk where others crawl." They nodded. And the new chapter began. In the capital, the people gathered at the riverbanks as bells rang in sorrow and relief. The emperor, weary, gaunt, but still seated, spoke from a balcony dressed in morning light. "The shadow crept into our court because we let it," he said. "But it was broken by those who owed us nothing, who acted when the rest of us stayed silent." He named Mei Lin, Bao, Zhangwei, not as heroes, but as reminders. Reminders of what happens when truth is chosen over fear. They were offered titles, coins, seats at court. They refused. Mei Lin returned not to the palace, but to the garden where her mother once dried herbs and whispered stories. There, she built a school, no stone, no gate. Just walls of carved wood and shelves of ink. Girls from across the land came to learn how to write, how to think, how to hold their own names. When asked why she did not stay in the capital, she smiled gently. "Because I've already seen what power looks like. I prefer what comes after." Shan Wei traveled from village to village, scrolls under his arm, a smirk in his smile. His first chronicle sold by word of mouth, a tale passed in taverns and temple steps alike. "The heart that did not beat in vain," he called it truth. But those who read it knew, it was also love. And perhaps penance. Bao walked with the wind at his back, staff in hand. Not a warrior now, but a shield. In his travels, he left behind no banners. No signatures. Only stories of a quiet protector, whose kindness arrived with dusk, and whose footsteps faded with dawn. The land healed slowly. Whispers still moved through markets and courts. Some claimed a new rebellion would rise. Others said the heart would return. But most simply looked east when the wind changed, and remembered. After the fires, after the light, after the story, there was only breath, and silence, and the steady rhythm of people choosing again. Epilogue. Somewhere, deep beneath the ruins of the Palace of the Nameless, a stone shifted, ash trickled, and nestled in a bed of dust and forgotten runes. A small bronze sphere blinked once. Just once. Then went still. For now, the heart of the dragon is gone. Not claimed, not corrupted, but broken, by choice. And in that choice, a new kind of power was born. This wasn't a story of victory. It was a story of letting go. If it carried you gently through the night, thank you for walking beside us. Sleep well. And if you'd like more quiet journeys like this, you're always welcome back at Deep Sleep Stories.